Okay, tell me if this sounds like you, or maybe someone you know. You're optimistic, you love adventure. Because of this, you have a hard time committing because you want to leave your options open, right? Happy is your go-to emotion. You usually overcommit, you spread yourself too thin, but you're very spontaneous. You're the king or queen of flexibility. You have a hard time, though, finishing what you start. But man, you're great at starting new things. Those tasks and those projects, they energize you. You, my friend, are probably the personality type 7 on the Enneagram. Today, we want to share with you what makes the 7s tick, their strengths, their weaknesses, and the things to work on to be the best version of themselves in life and in the local church.
Before we get into today's episode, will you do us a favor? There are so many pastors and church leaders, volunteers in small towns that truly want to see healthy supernatural growth. We all do. We all want to reach as many people for Jesus as we possibly can in our given communities. But you can help us to do that by getting this podcast out to more people than ever before by simply rating and reviewing this podcast wherever you consume the content. Welcome to the Small Town Big Church Leadership Podcast, a place for pastors, church leaders, and volunteers to grow themselves and the local church. We're pastors Brad and Misty Hilton, church planters in rural America.
Okay, so let's dive in. Let's look at an overview of the 7. All right, these guys are known as the enthusiasts.
Or the adventurer, as I like to call them.
Right, or I've heard them called the cheerleader as well, which is interesting. But they love new experiences in every part of their life, all right? They're also very optimistic. So they're dreamers with a very positive outlook on life. They're also very spontaneous. Right? They value that freedom and they don't like being tied down to like traditional routines. They're also highly energetic, which I love about them. They approach new ideas with enthusiasm and excitement. They're also multitaskers. But because they have that fear of missing out, a lot of times it results in them taking on many projects simultaneously. So this can also cause them to be like overextended, and they can get really frustrated with that. But they're also very people-oriented, okay?
They're people.
So they don't want to say no. They love the adventure of being with other people as well. But on the flip side, they often struggle with staying focused and completing all those projects that they start.
Another thing, though, is 7s don't want to feel unpleasant emotions, particularly when it comes to fear, emptiness, sadness, boredom, anger, disappointment, frustration. All these feelings for a 7 are like completely intolerable.
Right. Well, and you know, the thing about it is although a 7 doesn't want to feel pain, we can't avoid it.
It's inevitable.
It's inevitable, right? But as a parent or as an employer, understanding that, like, we can minimize that.
Sure.
Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. By the way we respond and by the way we handle even those moments where we are going to have to deal with something that's difficult. Okay, so another thing that I think is interesting about 7s, and that I've seen this, is they don't want to be tied down. Like, they're the friend that you'll call and you'll try to schedule dinner for Friday night. And it's like, they kind of want to leave the options open,
back
right?
Door
they want to leave a back door
cracked.
Just in case something more fun or more adventurous would come up. And I've literally seen this with my kids, okay? I think it's funny. But the other thing that they really deal with, and we kind of mentioned this earlier, is that fear of missing out or that FOMO, right? Because they tend to take on multiple responsibilities at once. Like, they don't want to miss out on anything good that they could experience, which can be a downfall.
So while we're in this vein, we might as well just go ahead and hit their strengths, because 7s have some great strengths.
Absolutely, they do.
One being that they are highly energetic, and they really, if you know a 7, you know when they enter the room, because they just bring an energy into every relationship. They tend to really inspire all of those around them. They are happy, happy, happy. They are life of the party. They're versatile. They're, they adapt really quickly to most situations, and to people and to plans changing. If you know somebody who is just always about, let's do something different than what we had planned, they're probably a 7. Sevens love to embrace new experiences. They love the new. They just jump on opportunities to acquire new skills and to learn new abilities. They're typically really highly creative, and they're great at, coming up with ideas, brainstorming, and looking at different possibilities. And these people can be very valuable in ministry, in the workplace. They're resourceful. They're really quick, usually at finding solutions to challenges. They're pros at what's called reframing. So like in the blink of an eye, they can take a negative situation and just change it into a positive situation, and just like that. And they do it really, it's more of a defense mechanism, but they do it subconsciously, and it's really stinking impressive.
However, there are some pitfalls or some weaknesses, as with every number, and so let's kind of look at those. Okay, so with a 7, they find it difficult to stay focused, as I said earlier. All those projects that they like to take on, it's really difficult to actually complete them. They might get like 70% done, 80% done, and then they're on to something else. They also tend to overcommit, so they can spread themselves too thin. They get bored really easily, and they can also make really impulsive decisions without necessarily thinking everything through. They're very quick on those things. They can also be perceived as somewhat self-centered, flaky, or unreliable. They also tend to want to sweep things under the rug to avoid the pain and the negative emotions that we were just talking about, as if it didn't happen, or they don't have to deal with it. And they're also very prone to addiction.
This is interesting.
It really is. Okay, of all the numbers on the Enneagram, of every personality, 7s have the biggest issue with addiction. Like if you were to go into the 12-step program, you're going to find more 7s than any other number. Addiction doesn't just mean like substance abuse.
No.
Addiction can be you have an addiction to constantly having to have something new.
It can be addiction to approval, addiction to success, addiction to achievement.
To shopping.
To shopping.
To starting a new business or a new
some
something.
family members in our household might have this addiction that you speak of.
I'm not even kidding you right now. You just have to learn to appreciate the people in your life that see the world differently than you see them, rather than being annoyed with other people, right?
Because we all have strengths and weaknesses.
Yes.
And so while we're talking about strengths and weaknesses, let's look at the strengths, or the healthy versus the unhealthy side of the Enneagram 7.
Right.
When they're healthy, 7s see connections between their areas of interest and expertise, and they're really able to focus their energy wisely in ventures that benefit something greater than themselves. And through every experience, they can see the lessons learned and be grateful for everything that passes, the good and the bad. And they can manage the method to their madness with finesse and inspire others around them in the process. Their positive energy can be really infectious. Combined with their curiosity for learning, and they have an open-mindedness. It's like a triple threat, But better yet, they're able to perfect their work-life balance while still making time to embark on new journeys and keep their personal happiness tank full, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but on 7s, when they're operating at their average self, what does that look like?
Right. So when they're operating as an average 7, they throw themselves into a slew of constant activity, like constantly seeking that next high that we talked about. So they're fun and busy and all around very spontaneous individuals, but they combat their stress with a growing list of fun projects to undertake.
They're quick satisfaction grabbers.
Yes. They're adrenaline junkies whose habit may kind of spiral into serious addiction. We talked about that, okay? The average 7 is also future-oriented, but almost always excited for something. They're enthusiasts rewriting their life to maximize their happiness and minimize or even deny the pain. So to do so, they plunge headfirst in various forms of like escapism, which I feel like are those new things, those hobbies, those things that can end up being an addiction if we're not careful. So all of that I just went through, that's the average 7. So now let's look at an unhealthy 7 and what they deal with.
Yeah, so when they are unhealthy, they can easily get burned out.
Yeah, I've seen this.
They can become cynical, and so they can actually lean towards the unhealthy side of a 1, where they become very critical of the seemingly illogical systems that surround them. Minute issues with others become highly irritating, and everything suddenly just becomes a nuisance in the worst case scenario.
Right.
If a 7 gets overwhelmed, they can easily feel like they'll never fully understand what their life is about.
Yeah.
So they're constantly seeking out meaning, jumping from place to place, person to person even.
Yeah.
They tend to lose their sense of groundedness, and may even appear to live in it like this perpetual fantasy, this world instead of reality.
Right.
And that's why, sometimes we have to say, how long will you be visiting planet Earth? When they realize that the made-up world is only an illusion, they tend to lose control over their mood and tumble into really extreme emotional highs and lows. And we've seen this so much with some of the 7s we're close to.
If you find yourself falling into that unhealthy category, start working on 1 or 2 things that could bring you into that healthier place, right? Because obviously, and I want everybody to understand this, God created you the way that you are and the way that you see the world. And he did that for a reason. But here's one of the things that when we study out the 7 is they don't like systems and they don't like routine. So asking a 7, for instance, when they work for you, to come in and do the exact same thing over and over and over and over, like a checklist, do these 5 things today, do these 10 things tomorrow, that would drive them up a wall.
They don't like following it, but they're really good at creating them.
Some of them are. I would say
a routine or a system creates coming up with something new for other people to follow, but as far as managing it or maintaining it, not so much.
Right. But it really, so it's important to understand, like when we're working with people, like 7 make really great leaders if they can innovate. So if they can create, like you said, new programs, new systems even, but if they have to maintain that system, okay? And I'll just kind of, another person that you probably know around here, we'll just throw her out there as well. Brandy, who is our life group pastor, she is a 7.
She is definitely a 7.
She's a 7 through and through,
Hands
okay? Down. And one of the things that we've realized with Brandy over the years, she's been with us the longest on staff, and she is very good at creating new systems.
It is honestly her superpower.
It is.
If we want to write new policies or procedures or create a new position, we will go to her a lot of times and say, hey, what do you want to get your hands on this? And she loves
developing
something
trainings.
New.
The other thing that you need to realize, like in the workplace with 7s, is that when they experience stress, they typically resort to that unhealthy side of the 1 that we talked about, which is those perfectionist behaviors. Yeah. They can become very defensive, critical, pessimistic, and even judgmental. So that is one of the things that as a 7, you've got to be really, really aware of. Yeah. When I get stressed, if I'm not careful, I will go to that unhealthy side. And when you start realizing I'm feeling stressed, you realize like, okay, this is not a good place for me because I don't want to be critical. I don't want to be defensive. Like, I need to be self-aware. And so it's important to just manage your stress and realize, as with every number, but recognize that under stress, what is the ugly, if you will, that's going to come out?
So let's talk about a few things that 7s can just work on, just be cognizant of. The first thing I would say is fight the monkey mind syndrome. In other words, make a daily practice of just deciding, what is the highest priority and what is most important, and just get really laser focused and don't allow those shiny, sparkly distractions to get you off course.
Right. Another thing is just slow down and experience the moment. All right. 7s like to stay busy and they want to distract themselves from feelings of discomfort. So because of this, they may not allow enough time to actually just relax and focus on being present where they are.
That's good. Another thing would be reflect on the past. Okay, you remember sevens like to avoid pain at all costs. So when it comes to relationships, it can get really kind of hairy. Make a list of those that have hurt you and those who maybe you have hurt, and work on forgiveness. Make a decision today, all right, to forgive. And since it's safe to assume you probably swept those emotions, those negative emotions and feelings under the rug because you didn't want to deal with the unpleasant, reality that you were dealing with. So get really good at just embracing those negative emotions and healing through it and forgiving those around you.
The next thing that I would say is whenever you've allowed yourself to embrace the negative emotions without avoiding them, give yourself a pat on the back.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it honestly means that you're maturing towards that healthier side of yourself.
You're growing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and be willing to go deep. When sevens share their authentic self with the world, they can form deep and meaningful relationships. It is possible. But if you aren't willing to go below the surface, then your relationships will really never be more than just surface level. So allow yourself to be vulnerable. I know that's hard. Even for me as a 9, it's hard. And be willing to have hard conversations when it's absolutely necessary. This is tough, but you can do it.
Absolutely. And the other thing is practice active listening. So rather than listening to the other people with the intent to respond, practice just listening so that you can understand. Not every statement needs to be an immediate response. So take time to consider what are other people saying, and then focus more on crafting a thoughtful and empathetic response. I want to just talk to you that are church leaders, okay? This is obviously a podcast helping you to grow your church. So if you are one of the people within your church who are placing volunteers, it's really important that you are listening to all of these different personalities, studying a little bit, because imagine as a volunteer that you are placed in the wrong position, or if you will, the Jim Collins quote, the wrong seat on the bus. And you are a 7, and you are innovative, and you love the new and the adventure and all of these things, and you are put into a position, for instance, doing the exact same thing over and over and over. What happens when they are in that position is they go to that unhealthy side, which is what?
Quit.
Burn out. So I want you to just think about this, because, guys, God created everyone with all these different personalities. He says together we are to come together to be unified as the body of Christ to do what? Win those in our communities. And so it's important that we notice and get close enough to people to understand their personalities and then get them in the right places.
If you don't know their number, I would just challenge you as a leader to make it your mission to find out what their number is so that you can be more effective in placing them in that right position. And then you know how to respond and react and interact with each person on your team accordingly.
Absolutely.
And so we hope this has been helpful to you. We love the Enneagram. We're by no means experts, but man, we've learned so much, and we hope that you're learning right alongside with us. But if this content has been valuable, we just want to encourage you, please help us get the word out there. Help us share the content wherever you consume it, and just let others know about it so we can help build the kingdom and equip people for the work of ministry in these last days. God bless you. We'll see you next time.